Today's episode is a story from the Singhasan Battisi. It's about Raja Vikramaditya's attempts to retain prosperity in his kingdom, including procuring a wish-fulfilling cow and a flying horse. Namaskar and welcome to Stories from India. This is a podcast that will take you on a journey through the rich mythology, folklore, and history of the Indian subcontinent. I am Narad Muni, the celestial storyteller and the original Time Lord. With my ability to travel through space and time, I can bring you fascinating stories from the past, the present, and the future. From the epic tales of the Mahabharata and Ramayana to the folk tales of the Panchatantra, to stories of Akbar Birbal and Tenali Raman, I have a story for every occasion. The purpose of the stories is neither to pass judgment nor to indoctrinate. My goal is only to share these stories with people who may not have heard them before, and to make them more entertaining for those who have. In this episode, we are back to the Singhasan Battisi. The Singhasan Battisi is a series of 32 stories, all of them centered around a king's attempt to sit on the throne of Vikramaditya. We covered the framing narrative in episode 124. Then, we covered many more stories which you'll find in the show notes and on the site sfipodcast.com. Let's recap the framing story right now, after which we'll cover yet another one of the 32 stories. Picture, if you will, a rather average king. This was Raja Bhoj. You might say he was sharper than a butter knife, and he could cut the mustard, but that was about it. Bhoj ruled his kingdom several centuries after Vikramaditya had passed on. Vikramaditya had been an immensely popular king, and even in Bhoj's time, he dominated pop culture. It wasn't just the Vikram and Betal stories which featured him in a starring role, with a reanimated corpse or a Betal in a supporting capacity. During Bhoj's time, you could pick up any celebrity magazine, comic book, murder mystery, romance, a philosophical essay, even just a cookbook. Chances are there would be a reference to Vikramaditya in there. They even had Vikramaditya Celebration Week, with reenactments, Air Vikram custom shoes, Viki Cola, and all kinds of assorted merchandise. One artifact that was fanatically sought after was Vikramaditya's lost throne. It had been lost for a while, and speculation about its location was quite rampant throughout the kingdom and beyond. So, the question is, what did this middle-of-the-road Raja Bhoj do once he stumbled on this greatest treasure of their time? The answer is that he tried to sit on it. Because, nothing screams, "I'm a competent ruler," like trying to swipe someone else's throne. But why, you may ask, would our noble Raja Bhoj want to sit on Vikramaditya's throne? I suppose fame, fortune, and the chance to make a royal spectacle of himself. After all, who wouldn't want to rub elbows with the elite in their hall of mythical fame? Our dear Raja Bhoj set his sights on the throne, convinced that it would magically transform him into the greatest king of all time. But why does simply sitting on a throne make someone the goat in kingly history? It's because the throne is said to be magic. Legend has it that Vikramaditya himself received special powers from the throne. So naturally, Bhoj assumed that he would get the same treatment. And you may be wondering if it worked. I'm afraid I have to keep you in suspense about it. You see, the throne was surrounded by idols, 32 of them, and every step that Bhoj took towards the throne, one of the idols intervened. They each told him a story about Vikramaditya and asked what Bhoj would do in a similar situation. And every time Bhoj's answer was different from what Vikramaditya actually did, the idol flew away. And every idol that disappeared from the throne, it made the throne look slightly less glamorous. But Bhoj soldiered on, determined to prove that he was in the same league as Vikramaditya. And who knew? Maybe he would make it. Or maybe he would fall flat on his face. Time will tell. Well, not just time, I will tell, in future episodes, that is. Let's jump into today's story with the next idol hovering in the air near Bhoj and starting her story within the story. Vikramaditya was worried and he had an urgent problem to solve. He just had a preview of his kingdom's quarterly business report from his finance ministry, and he was not pleased. Operating expenses had stayed flat when they were supposed to have gone down. The CSAT score, that is, the Citizen Satisfaction Score, had only gone up 2 points instead of the target of 3. The revenue was going up slower than a tortoise with a limp trying to climb a tree. All in all, that meant his kingdom's performance was no longer skyrocketing. That might be okay for average kings, but Vikramaditya wanted the best for his kingdom. When there was a financial crisis like this brewing, there was only one thing to do: call in the experts. And by experts, I don't mean economists who would suggest adjusting interest rates or easing fiscal policy. And neither do I mean fancy consulting firms that would charge by the hour to repeat back any conclusions that he himself came up with. What I mean is that Vikramaditya got together his crack team of 4 rishis, or the Fab Four as they were known in the rishi world. As it turned out, the Fab Four had a lot to say about it. The easiest way to improve your numbers is to update your numbers. Just say the word. It's your ministry and you have absolute power. That was not an unreasonable suggestion, honestly. But it wasn't the advice that Vikramaditya was looking for. A second rishi suggested building a wall around their kingdom to keep away immigrants who illegally entered and took away honest citizens' jobs. I don't know where you pulled that from, Vikramaditya retorted. We don't collect any data on jobs and migrants yet. A third rishi had a different answer altogether. The secret to your success is prayer. That was certainly a valid point, according to the fourth rishi. 90% of kings agree that a yajna is the most effective way of achieving anything. This fourth rishi said, using the Sanskrit name for the formal prayer, usually conducted by several rishis around a sacrificial fire. Vikram knew exactly what the rishis were talking about. So, when you say yajna, you really mean an elaborate ceremony with lots of guests, catered food, live music, and lots of party favors and such, right? Sounds awfully costly to arrange something like that. Vikram's finance minister leaned in closer and whispered in his ear, Sire, think of the ticket sales from an event like this. People will pay us their life savings. We can easily recoup our investment in this, not even counting the returns from the souvenir stalls, food trucks, the autograph stalls, the portrait painting booths, and the games. And the goodwill you will earn when you announce that you're creating jobs. It seems like a sound investment, even without the yajna itself. That seemed to convince Vikram. But Rishi number 3 had another plot twist to offer. You should seriously consider inviting a couple of gods to this yajna. Their presence will make it much more likely that the yajna succeeds. That was a fair point. So Vikramaditya wanted to know how he could get a couple of gods to show up. His postal service was excellent, even if he said so himself, but he wasn't sure that they could deliver invitation cards to heaven or Swarg, where most of the gods lived. But it wasn't just a matter of delivering letters, the Rishi clarified. What they needed was to pray to a couple of gods. At this point, Bhoj rolled his eyes and asked the Apsara, Seriously? So now they are going to do a couple of yajnas so that they could do yet another yajna? Don't interrupt, the Apsara retorted. Maybe the other Apsaras before me were tolerant of you interrupting whenever, but not me. I take this seriously. If you interrupt once more, I'll fly away and I won't return. Bhoj was suddenly quiet. Yes, confirmed Rishi number 3. We'll have to perform a couple of yajnas so that we can invite gods to the third yajna. Might I suggest Varun and Vayu? Great idea, Rishi number 3, Vikram said. Let's get started right away. There's no reason I have to pray to them one after the other. So we'll split this. I'll go to the beach and pray to Varun, the god of the seas, and you, Rishi number 3, can climb the snowy, windy mountain and pray to Vayu, the wind god. But Rishi number 3 respectfully suggested that he preferred to go to Varun instead. He had heard that Vikramaditya had already established rapport with Varun back in episode 136, but not yet with Vayu. For him to get a decent amount of blessings from both gods, Vikramaditya should try to establish a similar rapport with Vayu as well. And importantly, Rishi number 3 had recently picked up a new book with a bunch of new mantras. They seemed just the kind that Varun liked. Vikramaditya sighed and put aside his surfboard and beach blanket and sunscreen that he had enthusiastically began collecting. Instead, he reluctantly got out his mountain climbing equipment. Vikramaditya and Rishi number 3 went off in opposite directions, and they each got to their destinations about the same time. Rishi number 3 set up his beach chair, umbrella, and all that. But after that, he did get into his duty pretty quickly. He began praying to the massive ocean right in front of him. Maybe it comes from being a ruler, but Vikramaditya scaled the mountain pretty quickly. Getting to the freezing, windy top, he quickly set up camp, then took out his meditation beads and began praying to Vayu, the wind god that was freezing him right now. It's ironic that Vikramaditya wasn't back in his palace giving orders to steer the ship, so to speak. He seemed to have left his kingdom on cruise control. Running away from administrative duties did not seem like a recipe for success when the aim was to improve the state of the kingdom. And if by a miracle Vikramaditya's absence did not doom his next quarterly business report, then it really meant that his presence was not a net positive for the kingdom. But if Vikramaditya understood this, he showed no sign of it. He continued praying sincerely to the wind. And voila! Not too long after, Vayu appeared and gestured hello. Vayu's way of saying hello was to cause a little avalanche on the neighboring mountain. Vikramaditya waved back and explained that he was here to invite Vayu to his palace for a yajna. Vayu said that as much as he looked forward to it, he could not come himself. Vikramaditya's city was architecturally okay, but could it withstand a hurricane? Vayu may end up causing more harm than good. But he had something else for Vikramaditya, a gift. A gift that would solve the king's problem. A wish-fulfilling cow, Kamadhenu. If you haven't heard of Kamadhenu before, that's fine. If you want a pop culture analogy, imagine the genie from Aladdin with unlimited wishes, but without any of the singing, the dancing, and the humor. A wish-fulfilling cow may completely avoid the need for a yajna at all. But now that the preparations were on, it might be too late to cancel those plans. Vikramaditya thanked Vayu as the wind god exited the scene. Quickly, the king led the cow down the mountain and back towards his palace. A cold, snowy, windy mountaintop was no place for a cow. Meanwhile, Rishi number 3 had been praying at the beach. And again, not too long after, Varun appeared and waved. "Hey, Rishi number 3, long time no see," Varun said. Rishi number 3 was too polite to cringe at the dad joke there. Varun had been correct. Back in episode 136, Varun and his family had been guests of Vikramaditya, and Rishi number 3 had briefly met Varun then, without realizing that he was Varun, because the god of the oceans was in disguise. Varun's family had made life difficult for Vikramaditya back then, to the extent that Vikramaditya had clearly instructed Rishi number 3 to only invite Varun to the specific yajna and nothing more. But that precaution seemed unnecessary because Varun said that he wouldn't come. How could he? If he did, the entire kingdom would get flooded, and that too with salt water. That didn't happen last time, thought Rishi number 3. Varun almost caused a famine when he and his family were eating up all of the reserve food. But again, the Rishi didn't think it would be polite to say that. It had, after all, been a test that his king had passed. Varun instead offered a seahorse. I'm not talking about the bony fish with bent neck and long snouted head. This was a regular looking horse that came from the sea. And it had wings. That solves the king's transportation problem, Rishi number 3 said. Thank you. I will lead the horse back to the capital city. I should reach in a couple of days. Varun was puzzled. Why not ride the horse back to the capital? You'll reach in 20 minutes. It'll take you 20 minutes. Rishi number 3 was shocked. But, but, this is the king's horse now. I'm just an ordinary subject. How can I ride it? Varun was pretty clear though. As the king's delegate in this, you're completely entitled to ride this horse, he assured the Rishi. So the Rishi did get on the horse, but very reluctantly, and he occupied as little space as he could manage on the saddle. Varun had been incorrect about the time it would take to fly back on this winged horse. It did not take 20 minutes. It only took 15. But Rishi number 3 used the extra 5 minutes to wipe the saddle absolutely clean. He went back to Vikram, who had already returned to base. Rishi number 3 explained the whole story, leaving no detail out. When he got to the part where he explained his reluctance to get on the horse, Vikramaditya was impressed. Quite impressed. Enough to gift the Rishi both the cow and the horse. Bhoj's jaw dropped. Are you kidding me? Vikramaditya had the solution to everything here. World peace, poverty, hunger, and he just gave it all away. The Apsara was not upset about this interruption, because it wasn't an interruption. Her story was over. And in a way, Bhoj's comment had preemptively answered the question she was about to ask. So, I take it that if you were in similar circumstances, you would not donate the wish-fulfilling cow and the flying horse? Bhoj said that he absolutely would not. The Apsara sighed. And that, my dear king, is why I can't remain on the throne. Bhoj went on and on about how it made no sense to him at all. After all the effort that had gone into this, how could the king simply abandon his goals? But the Apsara was not listening. She had flown off. With a deep sigh, Bhoj took the next step. That's it for this time. Previous Singhasan Battisi stories are linked in the show notes and on the site sfipodcast.com. Check them out. And if you're a fan of Vikramaditya, there are also links to Vikram and Betal stories that we have covered before. In the next episode, we are continuing the Mahabharata again. Thank you all for the comments on social media and on Spotify's Q&A. I can't directly reply to the questions there, but I'll address them here on this show. Thank you, Kyra, for the kind words. Darsh, I hope you had a fun birthday. It was heartwarming to read your response. Thank you for the praise. Deep Explorer 08, thank you for your support as well. Vishruth, thank you so much, and you're right, the number 108 pops up on multiple occasions. The number of attendants that Shiva has, the number of gopis that were with Lord Krishna in Vrindavan. There's even a rumor that the Sudarshan Chakra had 108 serrated edges. But to be honest, I don't know how this rumor started. I'm certain that no one who has had an up-close and personal encounter with the Sudarshan Chakra has counted those edges. I certainly haven't. But in my case, it may be because usually when I'm close enough to the Sudarshan Chakra, my attention is on Vishnu himself. You're probably tired of hearing this, but I am Vishnu's #1 fan after all. Libby, thank you for the generous praise. Yes, an Akbar Birbal episode is on the cards. Aarti, thank you as well. And yes, others have also asked for a Tenali Raman story, so it will come up soonish. Shalu, thank you for the honest and meaningful feedback, as always. Abir, Certainly, I'm happy to call out the nuances and differences between the Ramayana and the Jain Ramayana. Arvind, I'd be happy to do a Subhash Chandra Bose story. He is one prominent Indian freedom fighter we have not yet covered on this show. If you have any other comments or suggestions, or if there are particular stories that you'd like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or reply to the questions on Spotify's Q&A. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can listen to the show on all podcast apps, and that now includes YouTube. If you want to send me an email, it's storiesfromindiapodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. A big thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.